Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Colonel Frank Colley. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Please be seated if you can do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Sergeant Henry Hilliar. Henry Hilliar was born in 1889, the eldest son of Thomas and Alice Hilliar of the Melbourne suburb of Berwick. He was educated at a state school, probably in Melbourne. As a young man, Henry moved to Western Australia, where he worked as a railway sleeper cutter. Henry Hilliar enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force as soon as he possibly could after the outbreak of war in 1914. The recruiting office at Bunbury had not yet begun operations when he presented himself for service. He was among the first 60 selected, a group that was described as fine a 60 men as could be produced anywhere in Australia. It was later reported that the medical officer congratulated him on having the best physique of all who underwent examination. Hilliar was posted to the 11th Battalion, and after a period of training in Australia, was part of the first contingent to leave for active service overseas. He first went to Egypt, where he continued training in the desert for several months. On the 25th of April 1915, the 11th Battalion was among the first to land at Anzac Cove. A friend of Hilliar's, Roy Retchford, later described how, as soon as the boats struck the beach, we jumped over the side into the water, which was well over our waists. We waded ashore, fixing our bayonets at the same time. We dropped our packs and then took the hill in our stride. We then established a fairly good position, digging in for our lives. Hilliar remained on the Gallipoli Peninsula for 7 months and proved an able soldier. By the time he left in early December, he had been promoted to sergeant. In January 1916, he arrived back in Egypt and remained with the 11th Battalion through a period of training that saw many of the battalions of the AIF reorganised to take on a new glut of recruits. In March 1916, the 11th Battalion left Egypt for the battlefields of northern France. Shortly afterwards, it was put into the front line to gain valuable experience of trench warfare conditions. Sergeant Hilliar had a good first impression of war on the Western Front, writing, "We have been in France close to 2 months now, and it is a good deal easier in the line than it was on Gallipoli. But I suppose it will be pretty hard when we have to move forward. They have a lot of artillery on both sides, and they are the boys that tell the tale, especially the machine guns." Hilliar's quiet time in the front would shortly come to an end. 8 days after he had written that letter, the 11th Battalion came under a heavy and accurate German bombardment that destroyed much of their trenches. Roy Retchford described it as an experience which I shall never forget. About 6 o'clock one evening, the Germans opened a terrific artillery bombardment on the centre of our front. As it went on, the fire intensified. You couldn't hear yourself speak, and it was nothing but a continual upheaval of earth, timber, iron, and bags of sand. The following morning, roll call was taken, and the men of the 11th Battalion began to hear the names of those who had not survived the bombardment. Retchford wrote, "One little officer came up to me and put his arm on my shoulder and said, 'Poor Hilliar is gone.' I burst into tears, for it was this Henry Hilliar sergeant of the 10th platoon that was so much with me on Gallipoli. I pulled myself together and had a look at the damage that had been caused to the trench. Later investigations determined that Sergeant Hilliar had probably been killed by a machine gun bullet while trying to fix some sandbags on the parapet of the trench. Although other reports suggest the fatal blow was delivered by an artillery shell or a bomb, all agree that death was instantaneous. Henry Hilliar's body was taken from the battlefield and buried. Today, he lies in the Rue Poutillon Military Cemetery at Fleurbet, under the words, "In memory of the loved eldest son of Thomas and Alice Hilliar, Victoria." He was 27 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Sergeant Henry Hilliar, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses, barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and we wish you all a very good evening.